So thank you for joining us today to talk about your experiences, Sam. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh yeah, like I think I just mentioned it a minute ago, it's my first podcast, so hopefully it goes okay. So a little bit about me. So I'm a Royal Marine Commando. I joined in 2010 into the Young Officers batch down at Livingston. Did 15 months of training down there, which I'm sure we'll talk about a bit later on. After that, I did a quick troop command for a year, and then joined a recce call sign at recce's HLS's helicopter landing sites all over the globe, and that's probably the first place I went to Norway with. And I did a tour of Afghan whilst I was there as well, doing HLS sites for medevac and for extractions whilst on the ground for the recce call signs out there. I then was a JTAC, so a forward air controller, controlling fast air, which is a fantastic job. I mean, jumping around, controlling, talking to fast air and dropping bombs. I was lucky enough to do a tour in Central Asia, doing that very job. And then I've done a few other quite boring desk jobs after that, which has led me to here. So, I mean, I've spent a decent time in Norway, in the jungle, in Brunei, as well as all over the globe, US, like I said, Central Asia, the Middle East as well. So, I mean, you know, I've had quite a varied career, and I'm quite lucky to have that, which I'm pretty sure only the Royal Marine sort of provides as a career, by land, by sea, as they say. So that's my very quick précis of what I've been up to over the past 12 years. But yeah, again, I'm sure we'll get into some of it as we move forward.
Fantastic, thanks, Sam. That's what a career so far, and plenty more to go, I guess.
We'll see. It depends what happens.
So can you tell us what you're planning to do?
Yeah, so later this year, so starting in November, I'll be beginning an Antarctic expedition. So I'll be starting off at the sea ice edge, so up at Berkner Island, trekking to the South Pole. So that's about 1,300 kilometres, which will take about 50 days, give or take. And then from the South Pole down to the base of a glacier called the Reedy glacier, which is the edge of the continental edge of Antarctica. So that there's still sea ice to go, but if the ice wasn't there, which it might not be in 20 years' time, would be the edge of the actual land continent. So it's about 1,950 kilometres all in, hopefully taking no more than 80 days. And the sort of two main things of the expedition is it's unsupported, so I'm not being resupplied to everything I'll be taking in the pulks and my sled from the very beginning. So no one will be resupplying me at all. And then it's unaided, so it's just me and a set of skis moving, whereas some people use kites and dogs, etc. So it's just me, manhaul and everything for the full 70 to 80 days over that distance.
Wow, that sounds epic.
We'll see again.
It's sort of in the spirit of Shackleton and Scott and Amundsen, and I mean those guys are after the pole, but you're actually going to the pole and then another great yomp afterwards, right?
Yeah, so back in the heroic age, so Amundsen and Scott and Shackleton, they obviously, for logistics wise, they'd start off at a point and then go to the pole and go back after a while. So they didn't do a full crossing. And there's only one guy who's done a full proper coast to coast crossing. That's a Norwegian guy called Usland, who helped use a kite. I mean, they can travel 100k in a day, no problem. So I mean, I'm not going to move that far. So just in terms of the weather window, it's probably as far as I can go without getting trapped by the wind. Mainly is the big one, and obviously the light, transitioning from 24-hour daylight down to 24-hour darkness quite quickly. It changes.
Right. Okay. And yeah, I mean, we'll talk about the risks a little bit in a minute. What's the sort of main purpose of your expedition? Why what do you hope to achieve?
So the original idea behind it was, like I said, I've been in a not particularly interesting desk job of recent, so it came from a bit of boredom over the first lockdown. I was on a military course where didn't have any contact with the outside world for the best part of 5 weeks, whilst COVID was this thing in China, and then in the middle of this course we got pulled out, returned to the UK, as it's obviously everyone knows what happened, and then within 2 days we're in a lockdown. So it sort of stemmed from a bit of boredom over lockdown, my mind wandering in terms of what's going to come next, into what it is. So that's where the idea of the actual expedition came from. And then with this, because it is record breaking, I'm hoping it gains quite a decent profile. And with that, I've straddled both the Afghan era where people are going away sort of every 2 years and doing some quite interesting tours in terms of what they see and what they experience, to especially for us in the Royal Marines, we're still doing a lot of things. And again, we're going away for long periods of time, but it's not necessarily kinetic in the same way that Iraq and Afghanistan were. So a lot of the guys don't necessarily speak about their mental health. So I want to use the profile of the expedition that it raises to increase awareness of mental resilience, and in terms of how people can, just speak to a friend over Zoom or over a phone, or go for a coffee or something. And actually it's healthy to speak about how you feel. And you don't necessarily, especially in the military sense, you don't necessarily need to have a kinetic tour where you've been involved in firefights. Everything affects everyone in a certain way. So with that, I want to, again, I'm sure we'll touch on it, speak about, sort of promote the commando ethos and the commando mindset as a healthy way to view it. And it's not necessarily just for commando, it's fully scalable to what we do, and what Dick has done in terms of being involved in the military through to everyday life. So it's part of that, sort of promoting the resilience side. And then whilst I'm down there as well, it's quite a unique opportunity to do some research. The space analog community, so they look at research into the Martian surface and the lunar surface in terms of how we might colonize one day the moon or Mars. And they're interested in exposure, in stress levels, in sleep patterns, in human performances, sort of mental psychology and human psychology of how an expedition like this in a strange terrain, quite boring terrain, in these extreme temperatures and extreme endurance events over this period of time. They're quite interested. So I'll be doing some research based around that whilst I'm down there, and hopefully get some decent data for them to research further in the future.
No, that's great. And so you've got a lot of strings on the bow for the expedition. We'll be fundraising a little for you in a game stream session, which is why we're having this chat today. But what are the kinds of organisations are you looking to for help?
So it's not a cheap endeavour, and sort of traditionally the older explorers usually came from a private school background, so usually came from the circles that mixed with a bit of money. So the overall expedition cost best part of £250,000. So I'm not sure in dollars, that's probably $370,000. And the main cost of that is for the company that gets you to Antarctica, and they look after your medical side and logistics side whilst you're down there. So again, I'm looking for partners for the expedition, and I've got numerous partnership opportunities, which again, hopefully, the high profile of this means I'll get international news, and anyone who's interested in potentially doing any research and wants to look into this sort of area, or is looking into this sort of area, I'm more than open to helping as many people as possible. And again, mental health charities, I'm promoting 2 charities. So the Royal Marines charity, which have an initiative called Lifting the Lid, and then a slightly smaller charity called Rock to Recovery that do mental health initiatives for military personnel and then blue light personnel, so ambulance and fire and the police in the UK. So they're good charities, really personable. So if anyone wants to help promote them, please get in contact with me, and I'll happily put you in touch with the right people.
That's great, thanks. Yeah, what a fantastic purpose to everything. The space travel bit's quite interesting. I wonder if Elon Musk could be interested, because I've heard he's interested in going to Mars, right? So
yeah, I think he's a bit busy with Twitter, but we'll see.
So you mentioned Dick. I'd like to bring Dick Thompson in now. Welcome, Dick, to the show, and could you just introduce yourself a little bit, please?
Okay, thank you. I'm Dick Thompson, and really honored to be here. Honored to be talking to Sam and sharing some thoughts with him and watching what he does and supporting him as he goes forward. So I really appreciate the opportunity. I guess my background was went in the military, Special Forces, Ranger, Airborne, those types of things. Went to Vietnam, worked with MACV there as a team leader, running SOG missions across the border, into other Southeast Asian countries. I've had the opportunity to make friends, so to speak, in 5 different countries where my friends tended to shoot at me for some reason. I'm really a nice guy, but they like shooting at me. After that, I spent time with the Rangers, then back to Fort Bragg, spent time there evaluating the Ranger battalions and Special Forces battalions on their emergency readiness exercises. If they were going to put in a Halo team as part of their operation, I would jump with the Halo teams and evaluate them. So I spent a lot of time doing that. Also, spent time at Fort Leavenworth, where they had me working on a project called Airland Battle 2000, how we were going to fight the next war starting in the year 2000. So my part was to look at how do you develop high-performing battle staffs, high-performing leaders. How do you manage to go 100 hours continuous, which they were predicting at the time would be the next ground battle, would go for 100 hours, which is actually what happened. Gulf War one. Once the ground battle started, it went for 100 hours. My brother was a Apache helicopter pilot in that, and he'd come in to rearm, refuel. They'd hand him coffee and a sandwich, and he'd just go right back out, and it just kept going. But anyway, that allowed me to do a lot of research around stress, particularly sleep deprivation, endurance type exercises, traveled around, met all the gurus who were into those kinds of things out in the civilian world, brought that into the military, and became one of the Army's subject matter experts on stress on the battlefield, and also spent time stress on the nuclear battlefield, how that was going to work. That got me into combat stress and looking at things like PTSD in greater depth. How could we do something with that? Spent 21 years in the Army, got out, started a company that works with managers and executives, and we did a lot of outdoor training in the beginning, but working stress into what they were doing. Today, we still do a lot around decision making under high stress, working with SWAT teams, the military, firefighters, anybody that's on a job that experiences a lot of high stress. So what you're doing falls under the category of high stress. So I'm very excited to, like I say, just be able to talk to you and track you and see what happens out there. So thank you for the opportunity.
So Sam, it's your first time meeting Dick. He's a bit of a legend in Special Forces, as you can tell from his bio there. Dick, we're really honoured to have you on the show as well, and thanks for coming on. So, I mean, putting it bluntly, Dick, hundreds of people have died in Antarctica trying to get across the continent or to the pole. What do you think, from your experience, what do you think the sort of primary risks are that Sam's going to face?
I tell people, I coach people on Ironman competitions, and I tell them that 50% of Ironman, accomplishing an Ironman, is physical. 90% of it is mental. You can push your body, you can keep your body going as long as your mind will keep going, as long as you can maintain that mental attitude that tells your body to keep going and push yourself through and not let the loneliness, not being around people, not having people to talk to, not seeing people, not let that get to you. I know several years back, One of the phases of Special Forces qualification had you out in the woods alone for 2 weeks. So every day you would just be given a set of coordinates to go to a place. You would find food there and a set of coordinates of where to go to next. That was one of the big attrition factors of Special Forces training. People couldn't go 2 weeks without seeing or talking to someone. So it really plays on your mind. And Sam's going to do it for 80 days or so. But yeah, it's just being alone out there, in addition to all the physical stresses in the environment, the wind, the brightness, the snow, the barren, terrain that's out there, and having to keep pushing and going forward and going, and knowing you're going to do it again, and then you're going to do it again and do it again. All of those things can start to play on you. And I know Sam's been working on a lot of techniques mentally to start adapting to that, and techniques to keep him going, keep his mind occupied, keep focused on the mission. And he's done some things already in his past that required him to be able to do that. It's just going to be a much longer trip this time. So, just being careful. Most polar bears have more sense than to go where he's going to be. So they're probably not going to drag him off.
Well, yeah, they're at the other side of the world.
Yeah, they don't go down there.
No, they don't. You might meet a few penguins, though, Sam.
Yeah, I don't think they're too vicious. So, as far as I'm aware, we'll see, won't we? But yeah.
So, what do you see as the main risks, Sam?
It's probably the mental sides. I think the isolation will probably be novel for the first couple of weeks, and then I think after the 14, 15 day part, it'll be not so novel, and then you'll probably get used to it. So I think there will be a period where the isolation and the loneliness will probably be the thing that they'll be most difficult. But like Dick just said, it's all mental, as long as you know that there is an end. And sort of something that I've always lived by is never look at something and it's on its whole and its macro level. You got to break it down into little bits. There's numerous techniques that I've used throughout the past 10, 11 years. Is just don't ever look at the end point. Look at the next day or the next hour or the next break or the little lump on the horizon or whatever you're walking towards. It's much easier to break it down, and then your mind's fixed on something smaller, and it's much more compatible with what your mind can do. But it's definitely the isolation is what I see being the sort of biggest mental risk, really, and that's probably it, really. I mean, the rest is all, like you said, it's physical, so it's long, slow slogs. So it's nothing absolutely nails. It's just the weather will be horrible, but again, I've got the clothing, the equipment, and the know-how to deal with it. So it's just making sure I look after myself, really.
So people might not realise, but you're burning through 10,000 calories a day or something like that, and if you don't maintain weight, you start to lose strength to pull the sled, or the pulk as it's called. So is that like something that would prey on your mind, that you've got to constantly check that your weight is staying where it should be, or do you expect to lose quite a lot of weight?
No, so I've been advised I need to put on about 10 kilos. So I'm 88, 89 kilos at the moment. So I've been told to sort of push it up to 100 kilos before I go, so I can go with a bit of winter weight with me. And then I've worked out a decent nutrition plan. There's a company that I'm working with called Resilient Nutrition, who have been fantastic, and they do a lot of endurance nut butters, so high calorie food and nutrition, natural nutrition supplements that come along with me, and they've got all sorts. They've got hot chocolates that are sort of to replace coffee, so it's got high levels of creatine and caffeine in it, which means you concentrate really well for an hour and a half. If you're feeling jaded, but they're absolute rocket fuel. I mean, you can see sounds whilst you've been drinking that. It's fantastic. But I mean, they've been really good. And then the meals I'll be doing, everything will be worked out. It's 24 hours rations for me. We'll have 8,000 calories ish, depend on what my basal metabolic rate, which is your sort of daily burn rate of what you need. So I'm expecting to lose weight, but again, it's something that I've planned for, and I'll be hopefully not losing too much whilst I'm down there. Again, like you said, you lose strength, so you burn through your fat, and then you start burning through muscle, which obviously doesn't help anyone. And you can have issues with your kidneys as well if you're in a calorie deficit for too long a period of time.
Right. Okay. So I mean, it's serious stuff. It's not like you're going for a hike across Iceland or somewhere that's civilized. You know, you're literally out in the middle of nowhere, and when the weather closes in, I mean, Dick would know a whole different level of risk when the weather closes in, when you're in enemy territory and you can't get extracted. But literally, you'd be in the same boat. You wouldn't be able to get extracted if you're in a whiteout. If your tent blows away, you've had it, right?
So hopefully that won't happen. I'm planning for it not to happen. But yeah, so I suppose the major difference between Dick's experiences and this one will be the enemy is the weather. There's no one out there trying to find me and hunt me down. So if I know it's getting a bit cheeky for my liking, I can put a tent up and batten down the hatches for 24 hours or 36 hours for however long. And again, I suppose the difference between Amundsen, Shackleton and Scott and now is I'll be able to get weather updates, and I'll be able to get people telling me there's a weather front coming in, and I'll be able to time myself around that. So hopefully I can be nice and warm in a sleeping bag before it gets to that point.
Okay, and if it goes tits up, you can call a plane in to come and pick you up?
Yeah, so there's a private company that look after you whilst you're down there. I say look after you, they watch over you. So you give them 24, a bit like the military, you give them 24-hour skeds, so you tell them where you are and how you're feeling, and whether everything's okay or not okay. And then I think sort of the furthest point I'll be from their base camp is about a 5-hour flight. So I mean, it's not a short time. It's something to consider, but I can be picked up pending weather relatively quickly. Apart from a few sections of the route where they wouldn't be able to land and they'd have to come get me by foot. But I mean, it's all been factored in, and it's a risk that the UK military are quite happy to take, and then this company are quite happy to take with me as well. So hopefully it won't come to that, but it's been planned for, luckily. Again, significantly different from the days of 110 years ago when you're stuck out there and taking a short walk outside like some people did.
It's an interesting. I was looking through some of the history of this, and one thing that sort of, I suppose, came to mind was chafing. Chafing of your body is going to be kind of a big issue when you're on your Todd for that long. Every little rub and burn and blister but it can lead to frostbite. It can lead to all kinds of serious problems. So do you have to design your rig for pulling your sled and everything? Do you really need to, because you can't be doing, are you doing the Vaseline in the armpits like you would have done on Dartmoor back in the day? How do you how big a factor is that?
A bit of chub rub affects everyone, I think. I mean, there's numerous days in my career, and far too many I can count, I've been Vaseline in areas that shouldn't be Vaseline normally. So it's something like that. Again, it's using the equipment first to work out where it does rub. So I mean, I did my first tire pull last weekend actually. So it's getting used to where certain things rub on the harness, or again clothing. Once I get all my clothing, I'm gonna have some very hot dog walks, I think, walking around, and it's probably the right way. So you are going to be a little bit sweaty, you are going to be uncomfortable because it's going to be tight on you in certain areas, and it's just getting used to it. And again, I suppose the difference between this expedition and a military one is getting out the military mindset where you grin and bear it and then deal with it. It's easier to deal with it immediately because I'm only under the time pressure of my own movement and the time pressure of my food running out, which I've catered for extra time. So if I need to stop and redo a shoe or retighten a belt or something, then that's down to me. So again, I'm going to have to stay on top of it, and it's something that I can't just, again, it's probably been the most difficult thing about training for this is getting out that military mindset of, it's a bit uncomfortable, get used to it. Whereas now I need to make sure that I am comfortable, because I can't get used to it, because like you said, it can cause issues with rubbing, frostbite. There's no one there to give me some antiseptic cream or to patch me up later on. So it's definitely something I need to keep on top of.
Yeah, I remember Ranulph Fiennes got an infection in his foot, I think, and which didn't respond to antibiotics, so he had to quit one of his missions in Antarctica. I was thinking, Dick, when you're in SOG, the gear you carried, you did it in layers, so you would have everything on your person. If you had to ditch your webbing and your pack and everything and just run for it, you'd have enough on you to survive. But I imagine where you are in Antarctica, Sam, that you don't want to put loads of stuff on your person because you want to maximize comfort. So is there, is that a relevant question? Is it a consideration?
So layers is something I think all militaries use now. We do something similar with whether it's tactical kit. So you have, your webbing on you or your chest rig on you, where you have sort of the bare basics you need to survive. So ammunition, a bit of emergency food and your water, and then, in your day sank, you'd have a bit more equipment. So that'd be like your warm kit, and then in your Bergen you'd have your stuff for sleeping and spare rations and things like that. So again, it's the same with clothing. So whilst in Norway we always get taught to layer, it's much easier. I think, as everyone knows, you've gone out to get a train and you've gone out in a t-shirt and a big thick jacket. You get on the train, it's really warm, so you take off your jacket, but as soon as you do that, you're really cold. So it's a layered system in terms of what I'll be wearing. So it'll be thermals, maybe a light jacket, depending on the weather, and then a windproof, or if it's really cold, I'll have a big thick jacket with a hood, a hat, different levels of socks. It's all about layering and being comfortable and being able to strip a certain layer off to maintain comfort and maintain, not getting too hot and overheating and sweating, and therefore getting everything wet so it freezes, and then not being so cold that you end up, freezing or end up losing toes and getting infections like that. So it's basic, very basic stuff that, again, you have to get used to taking the time to actually, I'm going to stop for 2 minutes, take off a top, and then put something slightly thinner on. It is basic admin, but it works, which is why all militaries teach it in their first phase of training usually.
And Dick, how was the weather in Laos for you? Was it an enemy like it is for Sam, or was it something you could just cope with?
It was an enemy, because the heat and the humidity, that ran the temperature up. Even your weapon was hot. So when you got in a firefight, the weapon started out hot, and very quickly, like with the Car 15, I couldn't hold the front handguard. It was just too hot, and I'd do a lot of shooting one-handed because I couldn't hold on to it. And eventually I put a piece of burlap on it. I was wearing a glove, just doing different things to try to be able to control the weapon in the heat. But yeah, the heat was causing you to sweat so much all the time, made you more susceptible to rashes and irritation, and you were sweating all the time. So then that created an electrolyte problem, as well as hydration. So there were a whole range of things like that from the weather. Sam's got it cold, but even when you're in the cold, like Sam was talking about a minute ago, you can be overdressed and start sweating. And if you sweat on the inside and get that inner layer soaked with sweat, because you don't realize what's happening, and you don't start to take some layers off to maintain a certain temperature, can create a problem for you. And then, like you were talking earlier about getting chafed or getting a rash or something, if you're wet and sweaty, then that enhances, the probability of getting an infection, like you were talking about. And then that little irritation that you notice in training, in 20 mile, 30 mile, 40 mile type distances, becomes very significant over a period of days. All of a sudden, things you don't notice on shorter distances become, major events. Pain, as you all know, occurs in layers. You have layers of pain. So I have people sometimes say, "Oh, my shoulder really hurts. I can fix that for you really quickly." And they say, "How's you going to do that?" I said, "I'm going to poke my finger in your eye. If I stick my finger in your eye, you won't notice your shoulder pain anymore. Pain's in layers. So when you find a way to reduce this pain, there's something else underneath that you just weren't aware of, but it's wearing on your body." So, and again, like Sam mentioned earlier, the mental part of tracking and keeping up with where am I, and being able to get in the tent and do a body check. Do I see something turning red? Do I see some issue developing that I didn't feel because the other pain was too great? So anyway, that's a little different from Laos, but you had to be careful of those things too.
So people talk about the commando mindset. Certainly the ads for joining the Marines, they're always promoting it, and it's sort of similar, I guess, to the special operations mindset, which you've spent your career devoted to, Dick. So can you each give us a bit of an idea of what that actually is? So maybe Sam, go first.
So in training, so because commando ethos in training is something that's like an overarching bubble that puts the values, the commando spirit and the commando mindset all together, and it's something that we live by throughout your career. And it's one of those that if you see someone, well, they usually don't make it particularly far in training, but if someone doesn't live by them, they don't normally make it to the end of the training. So the commando mindset is simply put, so it's the first to understand, to adapt and overcome, and to respond. So the idea being that you're very flexible, you're very rapid to work things out, and it means nothing really phases you. And once you get past that, which is what I said about the breaking things down, breaking tasks down to smaller chunks, it's much easier to adapt, to overcome, and fully understand something if it's small. Whereas if you look at something big, you're not going to have any chance. So actually making it a smaller chunk makes it a lot easier. The commando values, which is sort of the main thing we really push with the spirit, is excellence, integrity, self-discipline, humility. Again, the final one, humility, is something that it's very strange to talk about, but I think the Corps is really good at, we never really oversell ourselves, and that's the main thing. And people respect you a lot more if you don't essentially scream about what you're up to particularly much. And then the commando spirit is courage, determination, unselfishness, and cheerfulness. And again, the latter one, cheerfulness, is something that it used to be cheerfulness in the face of adversity, but I think most people found it was usually cheerfulness in the face of someone else's adversity. I mean, you're always laughing with your mates in terms of if someone's fallen in a river, you're laughing at them. That's cheerfulness, and then therefore it picks everyone else up. But I mean, those things, if people don't have it, they in the Corps, the Royal Marines, sorry, you're going to struggle to make it as part of a team. And again, they ring true as an individual. So throughout, I'll be needing a bit of determination to get up in the morning sometimes. It's quite difficult to be unselfish when you're by yourself, but and self-discipline as well being probably the major things. Self-discipline to keep yourself moving and keep yourself going. And again, like we've spoken about just a minute ago with the admin of stopping, make sure you're right. Don't just get in your tent, get straight in your sleeping bag and not look after yourself. Because again, you'll definitely feel the detriments of that 10, 20 days in when you've not looked after your feet and they're stinking of a bacterial infection. But yeah, that's the commando ethos in a very short nutshell. But again, we get bred into you, Commando Training Centre down in Livingston, and then throughout your career, you're always reminded of them, and pretty much everything you do has those values or mindset involved.
Fantastic. And how do you respond to that, Dick? How does that compare to US Special Forces?
Very similar. It's a mental thing. It's not about necessarily how strong you are. The big, strong guys wash out of the program very quickly if they don't have the mindset to drive through. And some of the things Sam was saying, like adapt and overcome. You've got to believe you can do that. You've got to find a way to do that. And, we teach, like Sam was talking about, chop it into bite-sized pieces. Something that you see as realistic, I know I can do that. You run until you can't run anymore. Then you walk till you can't run anymore. Then you crawl on your hands and knees till you can't crawl anymore. Then you get down on your belly and you crawl, and you're breaking down. I can crawl to that next tree. I can crawl to that rock. I can keep going in little bite-sized pieces. And if you set an objective that's too big, mentally you start to give up. I just can't get there. That's too big. But if I can break it into little successes along the way, every time I have a success, and this happens in everyday life, anytime you have a success, psychologically, you get a burst of energy. So if you're working and training people in a manufacturing setting or whatever, when they can hit one of their goals, they get a burst of energy. Now they can do more. And it's the same, with a special ops guy. A little success, I'm pumped now. I can go, the next 10 yards or meters or whatever it is that I need to do. Exactly. And it's happening here. But a lot of people don't have that.
Mindset is everything, absolutely everything. If you don't have a mindset to do something, you're firstly not going to even attempt to do it.
Right.
And then whilst you're doing it, if you're in a situation, again, it's not going to work. So everything is mindset driven in whatever situation, whether combat or whether on camp or whether just, getting up in the morning, it's down to the individual's mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how much of that is bred. Is it in you from birth, or is it, how much of it do you get from the training?
I suppose I don't know. I think it's something that people have to a certain level. Like I've said before, it's scalable. So everyone will have a level of self-discipline. It's just, it's fully down to the individual. So I think only a certain type of people really try to join the military in the first place. And then a lot of people try and join, from my experience anyway, and I'm not sure whether it's the same in the US, is you try and join the best thing you possibly can. And like Dick said, you can get some people who always really look the part, and they look like the sort of people who should be in films and in SEAL Team 6 or whatever. But then usually they're all gusto. They've got nothing to them mentally because they spent too much time getting to that physique. So yeah, it's a strange one to really put something on. But it's from my background, the Royal Marines and the Commandos that we have attached to us. I mean, it's to a man, pretty much everyone continues to live by those that commando ethos, whether they're 54 and about a year away from retirement, or whether they're 19 and a year out training. It's something we all live by, and you will get called out for not living by those standards.
Yeah, we've found in our research shows, like Sam was saying, everybody has some. There's a scale there, continuum. Everyone has some, but you've got to have a certain level of it if you want to be a commando, like Sam, or special forces or ranger or whatever. You've got to have a certain level of it, and it's not what your body looks like. I mean, if you go back and look at the SOG guys, the guys I ran and went around with, we were all, except for Tilt. Tilt was 6'2", so that kind of, he stood it. But he was slim, and most of the SOG guys are slim and not very big or muscular, but it was up here, and you keep going and you keep pushing.
Yeah,
and it stays there with you. I mean, you can see it in people in terms of how they go about their life, the things they do. Yeah.
So thinking of SOG there, Dick, how did you approach your combat missions mentally? What kept you going out each time a target was called up for your team?
It becomes addictive. There's one of the things that happens is every time you go out, you get the adrenaline rush and you get the cortisol, you get all of that, going in and on the mission, but you get a lot of dopamine in your system when you're coming out, and you get addicted to the missions. You get addicted to your team members, addicted to the team. And I'm not going to let the team go without me. I mean, people don't want to go home. They re-up. They try to get back, even, when they're wounded. You got to get me back out with my team. They want to get back in there. And that starts to build up. You get an excitement. Lynn Black and I had some conversations about, I don't want too long between missions. I don't want to be here just thinking about what happened last time or what might happen next time. I want to come back in and recycle and start for the next mission and go back out. So one of the things that we did was we started putting our own little mini missions in between the missions. We created the Black Dynamite hunting expeditions, and a few members of his team, few members of my team, and then we would find Sam, who was a cook or worked in admin or something, and say, how would you like to go out on a mission and be part of an ambush? So we could take some people who normally didn't get to do anything like that, take them out at night. No one knew what we were doing. We'd go set up an ambush some bad guys, and come back in, and that gives us a little excitement between missions. But, and that's just the mindset.
Right. So in a sense, once the tap was on, you just didn't turn it off. Yeah.
But that also, it keeps you up near your threshold of where you're going to get too much. And you can see it in people's eyes. You can hear it in their voice when they're talking, that they've gone too far. They really don't need to go back out again. I mean, we all have a limit to how much we can adapt to in terms of stress. But we don't know where that is. And if you cross that line, it might be on one mission, it might be after 20 missions, but when you cross it, you're going to have some issues that you're going to have to deal with. And we all have that limit. So, but what we don't seem to have, and I'm getting off track, but we don't seem to have a system that watches us and tells me that, hey, we're not going to deploy you again right away. You need a break. You need to do something different. We've got some things we want you to do before you go back into combat again, and different things like that. So, and you're not preparing me from day one. I mean, if I'm a little kid, somebody should be preparing me to start to deal with stressful situations, how to manage stress, how to mitigate stressors. And you have plenty of opportunities in schools with bullying and all other kinds of things going on. I won't go too far, but you can't start stress training too early. And by the time you get to the military, now you've got a solid understanding with techniques and you can do things. But if in basic training, you give me a little yellow card that I can hold up and say, drill sergeant, I think I'm going to sit down over here in the shade. I don't want to do any more work out here in the sun right now. It's just causing me a little stress. That person is going to crash and burn when you put them out, in a combat environment. I won't get on my soapbox.
Well, it's an interesting point, because I recall, from when I was a young lad and everything, looking in the military, and there's a stigma. So if you said, I'm not up to it, that would kind of be it for your career. It's not something you'd ever want to say, because if you say it, you kind of feel like you're going to get flushed.
Yeah. And it's out there. It's out there even after the military. If I want to go to the VA, to the Veterans Association for help, that becomes a stigma. As you know, we have the Arsenal assessment that we encourage veterans to take. They're afraid of it in a lot of senses of who's going to see it. I said, this is about life balance. It's not asking you about harming yourself. But a lot of vets are afraid to take it because somebody might see it. They're afraid of a stigma instead of seeing it as, this is what high performing people do. This is people like you and Sam do, to say, where am I? How can I get better? How can I take my commando mindset and strength and increase it and take it to the next level? And the arsenal can help me do that by showing me where I'm starting at. And just like when Sam goes on his mission, he's going to have some baseline data, and you're going to track it as you go along. And it can help you become stronger, run further, jump higher, and do all those kinds of things that you need to do. And it shouldn't be a stigma.
100%, yeah. This is something I'm quite keen to talk about openly. I know we've drifted off topic slightly, but like you said, there shouldn't be a stigma behind anything. I mean, everyone reaches, like you said, there's a stressor level for everyone. It's fully scalable. Some people that I know in the military are really good in combat situations. They've done numerous tours. They've never found an issue with it, but then they've come back and have found that actually the daily shopping, doing the groceries that they're getting from their supermarket is stressful because they can't work out what they want. They're going to feed their family for the next week. And there shouldn't be a stigma behind that. And it's something that especially the military, and I think in the UK, we're getting a lot better at saying it's okay not to be okay sometimes. And that can be silly little things like, or what you'd perceive to be a silly little thing that, you don't want to do a long drive because you're fed up. Actually speak about it. There's nothing wrong with it. Or whether that's going back and doing your 10th tour of a combat area, it's something that is slowly changing. But again, in the UK, our trauma risk management is all post the event. There's nothing beyond your basic training to build you up for the event, and that's something that your Arsenal survey is really good at. Is it builds you up and makes you realize where maybe you do need a bit more support, you do need to work on certain areas, and you can think about it and articulate it. And again, without sort of going through a chain of command or something, you can speak to someone. It doesn't necessarily need to be anyone. So it's definitely something that we need to start looking to do before an event, rather than going, okay, that was quite stressful, do you want to talk about it now? It's not acceptable, and it's not particularly something that we need to. It's definitely something we need to change. Going forward.
Well, I guess
something. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Dick.
It's something that you're already using now, and you'll use, as you go on your journey, is being able to say, how am I? How am I doing mentally? How am I doing physically? Doing your own self-check, and being able to say, and you mentioned it a while ago, maybe I need to get in a tent and stay a little longer this time. I'm noticing my knees beginning to ache. I might need a little longer break to make sure that I don't go out, tomorrow morning and injure my knee to the point that I can't keep going. And just recognizing that you're in control, and being aware of yourself, your body, your mind, and what you need, and then giving yourself that so that you can continue on and accomplish your mission. So, you're going to use all those techniques and everything to get you through.
So Sam, you took the Arsenal survey. What would you share with us any findings, or did it cause you any surprises, or how was it?
So me and Dick, when was it? It was last week, wasn't it? We spoke about it. We discussed the results. So from memory, it was I'm not sleeping enough, which I'm pretty sure is true for most people. I try and get a solid 8 hours, but again, life takes over. And then awareness was the I believe, I'm trying to think now. Yeah, awareness was sort of the other area in terms of awareness of myself and surroundings and things. So it's a really good baseline, and thank you, Dick, for helping with that and sending me the information, the feedback. Good baseline for something that hopefully I can build over the next 5-6 months before I go to then get myself ready mentally. I'm looking for any hints and tips. They'll help me get there. They'll help me get there mentally ready for the start. And again, it's not really the start. It'll be the middle around Christmas, probably Christmas Day is roughly the middle point of my expedition. So that's going to be a big hurdle, a big step mentally to get over that. So no, thank you, Dick, for your help. And it's a really useful tool. And I'm glad we got to speak a couple of weeks ago, last week.
So Dick, what advice or questions have you got for Sam around planning his approach with preparation for the mission?
I think the path that he's on now is a very good one, and not because what he's figured out at this point is all he needs to be able to be successful, but because he's on an open path that allows him to explore different avenues, different techniques, different nutritions, different foods. He's got people coming to him who have, high tech, high performance type gear or meals or whatever that's willing to work with him. And he's very open-minded about what he's doing and saying, what will help, get me to the next level? What's going to work for me? So there are products and things out there that might be great, for you or I, Rob, that don't work for Sam. And, so a little exploration to find out what really works the best for him, to keep pushing him to those other levels. And, he's already done and continue to do a lot of research about other people who are going out there and who have been out there. What did they do well, not do so well? Where did their problems come from? So that he can work to make sure those are not issues that plague him while he's out there or slow him down. So, I think he's on the path, and he's got the mindset. He's pushing hard. So, and you and I are going to track him, and he's going to know. He's going to know that. He's going to know we're tracking him every day, and we'll watch. It's like we're looking down from above on him and saying, "Hey, you're starting to drag a little bit. You're starting to drag." He will know you and I are saying that, and that's going to push him, and he'll feel us behind him, kind of pushing on him, keeping him going. So he wasn't expecting this kind of support, but
sounds like a threat, Dick.
No, we'll be watching, and we're going to put a tracker on you so we know exactly where you are and what you do.
Something, just a quick aside, something I didn't feel so much in the Navy, but in the Royal Marines Reserves was day one, first run out of the barracks, 9-miler, and we get to 8 miles, and I'm in a rough shape, but I'm keeping it together just about. And a guy just puts his hand in my back, the guy next to me, and then the other guy sees it and he puts his hand in my back, and I just thought, this is great, and that's. I never expected that in the military, that, because you see all these boot camp movies and everything, and you don't see guys doing that, putting a hand on each other and helping in that way, and I think the Marines has that, and I'm pretty sure Special Forces has that.
That's the unselfishness part that I spoke about with the commando spirit is, you're there as a team, and the old adage of, you're only as good as your weakest member is bring everyone up to the same level or up to a certain standard. So, what are you going to achieve by letting someone fall by the wayside? Nothing. So you might as well all get through it together and be part of that team. And it helps build teamwork and a good ethos in terms of how you operate together and how you work together. And again, it makes everyone friendly with each other is you'll be better at other things than, they will be. So you help them through it, whether it's map reading or whether it's, administration or whatever you're doing. Is everyone has weaknesses, everyone has strengths. So it's all part of chopping and changing to make yourself as good as the team can be.
And this is, what you're doing is a level or 2 or 3 levels, maybe beyond what you're talking about, in that if you have people right next to you, that's one thing. That's talking to you, motivating you to keep going, putting a hand on their back. When you're there by yourself, if you think you're alone, if you think you're by yourself, then you are. But if you realize, if you open yourself up and realize you're not alone, you are not alone. And Rob and I are going to be there with you. You might not see us, but you'll feel our presence. There'll be dark spots that you hit out there where it just seems like you can't keep going. And you're going to hear that little voice in your mind saying, we're watching you. You know, we're supporting you. We're pushing you. Feel that push from behind. We're helping you. You know, we are there with you. And when that thought pops into your mind and you realize that's what we're doing, you know, it's going to give you that little extra burst of energy, just like we were there, and kind of push it along, get you through that dark spot. And, you know, you keep going.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Still sounds like a threat at points, but
you might not appreciate it when you're out there.
No.
But after you get through the dark spot, you'll say, yes, you know, those guys were here. You know, I could feel their presence.
No, thank you.
So I think that covers what I was going to ask about. What advice, you know, do you have when Sam's all alone, tired, in a whiteout in -80 Celsius, you know, minutes from death if you make a single mistake? I mean, people don't realize that, you know, you could literally, that could be the end if you make a mistake. And you know, a big part of Dick's book on stress resilience, the stress effect, it really explains how the more stress you're under, and that could be from the environment, it could be mental stress, it's just the monotony, you know, the whiteout, it affects your decision making, right? So and every decision out there could have some very, very serious consequences. So I guess the thing is to manage that stress the whole time and to try and stay, you know, really on top of it. And what you said about the humility and the humor side of the commando mindset, I think will really come in to kind of, you know, to keep yourself in that state of mind where you're not just staring into the abyss. But I mean, there's got to be days where that happens. I mean, I've looked at some of the other explorers and they have it, right? And you must have seen this in your research.
Yeah, so I think on one hand, isolation and being by myself is obviously a downside, but on the other hand, I consider myself quite lucky to not be a team leader or and again, I'm sure Dick will support me on this, is when you've only got to look after yourself, again, you can be quite selfish. You know, you're not trying to look after a team as well. So being selfishly looking at it is actually by myself, it's probably easier than, you know, those mental decisions that you're making maybe under stress. It only affects me. Only whilst I'm down there, everything I do is only about me. Whereas if I had a team, I'd, you know, be constantly thinking about other people. Or if you had a bad time or you're overly stressed, you might only think about yourself and completely ignore the other people in your team, and it's not good. So on one hand, it's probably detrimental after a while, but on the other hand, it's fantastic because, you know, I'm not to think about anyone else or anything else apart from me and when I get my tent up, and then how I feed myself, and, you know, no one else is needing me and no one else is wanting me to do anything for them. So it works both ways, and I'm sure there'll be some days I'm glad I'm by myself. I'm sure there'll be other days where I just wish I could laugh at someone else because they've had a rubbish day or something. But it's, yeah, swings and roundabouts, I suppose.
Yeah, Rob and I we might send you some recordings, little short recordings. So when you hit a dark spot or you're a little lonely, you can turn on your playlist and it says, "Suck it up, Buttercup." We're watching. I mean, we might send you some little motivational, you know, audio that you can use from time to time. Put a little humor in your day.
Yeah, another Royal Marine actually, Baz Gray, who went to the pole. When did he go? A few years ago now, but he's looking at doing a similar expedition to me, probably next year, so 23, 24. He said one of his daughters made a small iPod or a small MP3 player worth of music that he'd listen to in the evening, and interspersed between all the songs would be a little buck up buttercup type message, or a nice message, or the dog barking and stuff like that. So I think that's the sort of thing that will really help. So that'll be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to send you a MACV patch that you can, maybe you sew it on one of your jackets or something. I'm sure you've got some with sponsor patches or something on it that you're wearing out there. So
I will do you a trade. I'll find some patches, some Royal Marine Commando patch or a Commando Dagger or something.
Okay.
I'll send her out to you.
Oh, that'd be great.
Make a note of that.
And take MACV SOG to the South Pole. That'll be the first time.
Yeah. That would have put us all in the shock, because you're going go from one extreme to the other.
Well, Dick, I mean, what Sam just said about going alone and not risking the team, that rang a lot of bells from things you've said before.
Yeah, I mounted a campaign to try to do one-man missions, just so that I just had to focus on me. I mean, not if I'm going to go out and do a raid or an ambush necessarily, but if I'm going out to watch a highway, watch the traffic, put airstrikes on, I don't need anybody to help me do that. So I can be very quiet, very hard to find when I'm out there alone. And, like Sam was talking about, I just have to worry about me. And if I run into the bad guys, I just have to get me out of there. And if I can't get me out, my philosophy was, you've lost one guy. In fact, don't even come look for me. If I'm okay, I'll walk back. I can find my way across Laos or whatever and back in. So yeah, I think, like Sam was saying, there are times when you can just focus on taking care of you. It allows you to focus your decisions, make different decisions than you would if you were leading a team and you had to worry about everyone else. Now on a one-man mission, it's about you. It's about what you need. You're in control. You're making decisions. You check you out. You know where you are. I'd rather do that myself.
So yeah, it's the same. It sounds like, just listening as a civilian observer to you two guys, there's so many parallels. There's so many parallels from Special Forces in the 1960s, Royal Marines in 2020. It's amazing. 60 years on, or 50 years on, and the comparisons are just jumping out the page.
Well, there's one thing that hasn't changed at all, and that's the fact that everyone's going to look at you and say, "You're crazy. You're just crazy. What is wrong with you?" But that's okay. Sometimes that just makes us push that much harder, to accomplish the mission, to do what we're going to do.
Well, it's the 80th anniversary of Commandos in the UK. So this year, 1942, Commandos were thought up of by Churchill. So I mean, it's just, I suppose, the year that helps do that. But I mean, the whole point of Commandos was doing commandery raids, so crazy things that most people wouldn't dare to do, and that was the point. I'm pretty sure it might not be true, but I've heard there's a story that even now in Germany there's still a kill capture mission out for any commandos on German territory, which I'm pretty sure they don't do anymore, but I think it's one of those old bylaws that hasn't ever been relinquished from 1940s. But so it's like I said, we're very it's a similar mindset. I mean, commandos have sort of bred through for the past 80 years, clearly from 1942, and then a range of battalions that did Pont de Hoc in Normandy and all the way through to Vietnam, that obviously the UK weren't part of, but I mean, we had similar jungle-born warfare in Malaya in the 50s, through to, I mean, we're invasion of Iraq the second time round in NAVFOR. I mean, we worked together with SEALs and Green Berets and US Commandos. So, I mean, we've worked together well throughout our history, I think now, or modern history for us. So yeah, I mean, we're intertwined in everything we do. And again, the elite units around the world all have very similar mindsets. So I'm sure you could go to the South Korean commandos and they have very similar commando ethos to the UK, to the US side. I mean, it is a little community. We all do get along, obviously, depending on who you're talking to, but no, it's definitely something that's all similarities are there because it's a similar specialist unit or group of people that do these jobs, and you have to have that mentality to be able to do those actions and those jobs that we do out there and have done in the past, whether it's the late 60s, early 70s through to, like you said, now in 2022, working in different theatres that we're in at the moment.
So Sam, which person do you think has inspired you most in your life, in your adventures?
Person-wise, it's a difficult one to say. So for me, I can't really relate to many of the old explorers. Like I think I mentioned it earlier, a lot of the explorers from the previous years, especially the heroic age, were all quite privately educated, which I'm not, from very well-to-do backgrounds, which again, I'm not particularly from a well-to-do background. So I suppose it's a difficult one. We looked at, I remember at the beginning of the training, we looked at the differences between Shackleton and Scott, and the way Scott led was very autocratic and his way or the highway type thing. And, there have been studies and there have been some commentators that said that maybe that's one of the reasons why he wasn't particularly successful in his bid to get back from the pole, where Shackleton, when you look at what he did, and if you don't know the story of the Spirit of Endurance, when his ship got stuck in the ice, it's mad, but he, over 5 or 6 months, sailed across 2 oceans to get help and then sailed back to get the rest of his guys off Antarctica. And they're saying that Shackleton was sort of more of a democratic leader in terms of the way he asked for ideas and wouldn't put himself in a position that he wasn't willing to put anyone else in. So in terms of an individual, a very long-winded way of saying it, it's probably Shackleton, but like I said, it's sort of the sense of adventure has been the inspiration for me. I was lucky enough to grow up in the southwest of England, where there's loads to do and loads to adventure, and then joining the Marines has sort of given me an adventurous outlook on life anyway. So I'd say it's more the spirits of endurance of one single individual. But Shackleton, again, if you don't know the story of Shackleton and his endurance trip, it's something you wouldn't believe, and if it wasn't real, you think, oh, it's all made up. And I mean, there's been a couple of films recently, but yeah, if you've not seen it, definitely have a read up of it. It's fantastic.
I think I was reading the other day that Sir Edmund Hillary has been down in Antarctica and done various things. He was obviously known as the first man to conquer Everest, but he was involved in a lot of polar exploration. And I actually met him and I had a beer with him in the 1980s, and just by accident, because I was there to hear him talk, and I happened to be old enough to be in the bar. So, and being from a Navy family, I was in the bar. So, and there was just this old guy in there and me. And so we got chatting, and then I kind of clicked that it was the guy who was here to talk. It was Edmund Hillary. And what he actually said to me was, what everyone doesn't realize is when I got to the top of Everest, there was a snow cap on the top, and I was too heavy to go on it. But Tenzing Norgay, he went up on the snow cap, so he went higher than me, and all the press around the world are talking about me, but it was Tenzing. I thought that was really humble,
Yeah, he's again, if you've not seen it, I don't know whether you've seen it, Dick. Is it's on Netflix, a program called 14 Peaks about Nims, who's an ex UK Special Force. Actually, he was in the Special Boat Service, a Gurkha who climbed the 14 peaks over 8,000 feet, meters, feet. Hold on, meters. Always get those mixed up. But yeah, so he climbed it. He sort of championed the Nepalese people and saying that, it's just the way the Western media looked at life. So like you said, Hillary was very humble in terms of what he achieved, with the Western media don't want to portray that someone else who's part of the Commonwealth did something slightly better than me, or, albeit a few meters or whatever. But it's luckily the media's changed now, so it recognises the other people as part of these expeditions. And again, this is something that I've been quite lucky with. And the age we live in is I'm not reliant on old technology or people, a large support team that won't get the recognition. Whereas I'm sure there are lots of people who didn't get any recognition from the heroic era 110 years ago.
Dick, did you have a particular inspiring character that made you join the army and special forces, or was it just something you had to do?
Well, it was something I had to do, but yeah, I became a fan of Darby's Rangers, and that's when I kind of focused in on, I need to be a Ranger. I mean, we were already playing Army. We'd already put together, in the book it talks about, created the Thompson's Rangers and recruited all my little cousins and some other people, brought them in, and there's a picture of the log book where we kept our logs and everything. But Darby was in the beginning, and then when I got into special forces, guys like Dick Meadows was already a legend, and ended up being my boss in SOG, and I got to work with him, learn from him. And then he was one of those guys that says, look, this is what we need to do, and you guys don't seem to be able to do it. I'm leading the team next time. Watch what I do. I'll show you how to go out and get the prisoners, get whatever it was. And he'd just take a team out and do it, and then come back and continue to be the boss. But I mean, he was not a guy who said, you go do it, I'm going to watch from the sideline. He was, a legend. I really learned a lot from him. I had Eldon Bargewell as my assistant team leader, who became a SOG legend, ended up retiring as a major general, commanded everything in the special ops arena that you could command. So there were people like that that were very inspirational, that I learned from. I had chances, to work with. So, yeah, I like being around people like that. I like learning from them, watching what they do, asking them questions. How could you do that? And, Meadows was one of those guys. It didn't matter how many bullets were coming at you. He was just talking like we're talking now. You need to take your men and move them around this side here, and let's put some fire over on this. I'm thinking, holy cow, all this stuff is coming at us. And he's just having a conversation. And Bargewell said, come get us. I mean, he was a warrior. He'd just eat their lunch. It's when he got a chest full of medals like he's got, and climbed on up the chain. He was a warrior. Nothing scared him.
Well, in the spirit of true special operations, I've mounted an ambush for Sam today. So, Sam, I'm just going to bring in John Stryker Meyer, who has just popped in to say hello and wish you well. So we're going to see if we can connect up and get the commo working. So stand by. Expect hilarity. There we go. How you doing, Tilt?
A little slow, but we're getting there, brother.
Excellent. Thanks for dropping in. I just messaged you. You must have been about 6 a.m. when you picked up, right?
Indeed, right on time. Try to rise with the sunshine.
Well, thanks for jumping in with us. Dick, well, and this is Sam Cox, Royal Marine, who's planning to walk across Antarctica.
Yeah, only 1,600 kilometers.
A little bit further, but a little way.
Oh my God.
albeit virtually. But yeah, it's, wasn't expecting this.
Is that right? What started all this?
Boredom mainly.
Really?
Yeah, so I was just saying, it was one of the lockdowns. I finished a course and just came back and got very bored. So I was looking at things to do, and it spiraled from being a small idea to what it is now, which is a hopefully world record breaking expedition. But we'll we'll see.
All by your lonesome self in the Antarctica, huh?
Yeah, so a lot of time to think, I suppose.
Indeed. You've
Yeah.
been doing a lot of cogitating out there. Take a dictaphone so you can take all your mental notes and while you're walking, you know.
Yeah, so I genuinely am. So one of the research, again, I was speaking about it earlier, is and doing a lot of research for human performance for the space analogs. So the guys who are looking at lunar missions and Martian missions and the way we might live on those surfaces in the future. And one of them wants me to have an audio diary, so I don't, you know. They said a lot of people when they write a diary lie because they get to think about what they're doing and scribble what they didn't want to say. Whereas they asked me, as soon as I get in and I'm safe and I'm warm, do your audio diary. So we'll see how rude it is, and might put it out for general transmission.
Outstanding. And Dick, top of the morning to you, sir.
Good morning to you. You were also one of the guys that impressed me in SOG. I used to watch you go out, and I would say, how can somebody that tall go out, do what you do, and come back? How can they not hit you? You know.
Oh yeah, you didn't look at my fatigue pants. The knees were worn out from crawling in the jungle. I didn't run through the jungle. I crawled through the jungle. A little different than Antarctica.
Yeah, you did a great job, though. I was always impressed with what you did.
Likewise, sir. Absolutely. So I've got to run in about 10 minutes, but Sam, I understand you're also going to be, you'll be doing a side benefit at some point to bring more attention to veterans issues also in your spare time. Yeah.
So the plan is after the, which you'll both have to come over for actually after I get back. So probably next April, May, I'll be hopefully doing a big gala dinner somewhere in the UK to sell off all my kit and raise a bit of money for some charity. So you're more than welcome to come over. It's yet to be organised, but I need to get somewhere with a decent capacity to get some people in. But in the UK, I don't know whether you do them over in the US. If someone unfortunately dies in service, we open their locker up and sell everything off in their locker. I'm not going to be dead when this happens, hopefully. But we sell everything off. So you get a pair of flip-flops or a pair of their fizz shorts selling for several £1,000s, and you know, all sorts. Their towel that hasn't been washed for 6 months selling for 500 quid. You know, it's a fantastic occasion. So I want to do that when I get back from Antarctica, send off all my equipment, you know, my skis, my poles, my boots. If someone wants a pair of my smelly boots, so yeah, you have to come over.
Well, my wife also had an idea. Are you going to a central point in Antarctica? Would be like at the very bottom of the world? Will you be leaving like a marker, like Sam was here?
maybe using urine, but yeah, you're not allowed to leave anything down there. So it's a big environmental area. So the last
litter, huh?
No, the last 60 nautical miles, you have to take everything with you. So I'll be doing a poop and scoop and putting it back in the sled. So my sled won't be getting any lighter, unfortunately. But yeah, you can't litter. It's quite obvious, I think, if you do. But
oh wow,
yeah,
things you never think about.
Yeah, it's something to be planned for.
Outstanding. Well, I've talked to Rob clandestinely. So when you go, before you go, I'm going to mail you a RT Idaho Recon team patch. And then I'll mail you one of my coins. We have a King B SOG coin. And then one of our guys that Dick and I served with, he was a Frenchman. And I have a couple of his challenge coins left. We lost him 3 years ago, but I'll mail those off to you as a best wish from me to you for good luck through our friendship with Rob. Never let a good cause go without helping Graham.
Hey, thank you so much. I was just saying to Dick, I'll have to do a trade. I've got some patches here as well. I'll and some coins. I'll do a return. So I'll get some addresses off Rob after this. Thank you.
Indeed, absolutely. But it sounds like an incredible mission, and a little bit chillier when Dick and I were serving. And I don't know. I'm not into cold weather at all. God bless you down there.
Definitely colder.
Definitely colder.
So Sam, are you planning on taking audiobooks with you?
So yeah, so I've also heard. I know I was reading the blog of someone who went and their headphones broke within day 2, and they'd only trained with music and audiobooks and podcasts. So I'm trying at the moment to do everything without. So it's not the end of the world if my headphones break or my iPod or my MP3 player breaks. But that's the plan anyway. I've heard people listen to books and things, but yeah, I don't want to rely on that. Otherwise, it's going to be a long month and 2.5 months potentially without anything if I've trained with it. So it's something to build up for.
Yeah, well, you need to take all of Tilt's books.
You got 2 audio books.
Yeah, audio books because you'll hear his voice.
I'm too cheap. Tom. I called Tom Selleck and he was a little busy, so I said, "To hell with it. I'll just do it. I'm just too cheap."
So you'll hear his voice, and as scary as the stories are that he's telling, remember, Rob and I are going to send you some special little audio clips to listen to. That's going to get your attention. Suck it up, Buttercup, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. No, but I do encourage you to take Tilt's audiobooks.
That sounds good. I'll get them.
And then we'll also, if you don't have them, we can give you the links for Jocko Willink podcast, because Jocko has interviewed Dick 3 times. And after I heard Dick on his second one, which was Jocko podcast 205, he had 204, 05, and 06. I called Dick up and said, "Dick, I just heard your story with Jocko. I feel like a wimp."
You're not a wimp, I can tell you that.
I know, but after hearing your story, Dick, that was just incredible.
Jocko tells it well.
Indeed. He forced you to get into the good details. I mean, imagine, Sam, if you're rappelling down a rope without gloves, at some point the rope turns red.
Yeah, I'm assuming not from
into his operation that day, which
no,
he,
Rob
by the way, completed. Yeah.
Yeah, Rob sent me the link, so I have listened to this. Yeah, I've got more questions than I can shake a stick at, but
well, that's okay. Between the 3 of us, and Rob's up to speed on most of the good stuff, so we'll get an answer for you before you leave. So, when's your official takeoff time?
Oh, not till November, so I've got a few more months.
All right, good.
Planning and fundraising.
Anything, Rob? Anything else you need from me? I've got 3.5 more minutes.
It was a perfect ambush, Tilt. Thank you.
Absolutely. My pleasure. It's a real honor to meet you, Sam. And Dick, it's always good to see you, even early in the morning.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
All right. Well, in that case, I'm going to sign off, and we'll have more combo before you leave, Sam. And if we get that address, we'll get your the coins and the patch to you.
No, thanks so much. That'd be amazing.
All right. Well, good luck down there, and I just admire what you're going to be doing, and our prayers will be with you.
Thank you. Good to speak to you. I'm pleased to meet you.
My pleasure. Till next time, gentlemen. Take care.
All right.
There we go. So Tilt has left the building. So I thought that would be fun because we were chatting at this first thing this morning, and I said, why don't you just pop in and do an ambush? So I guess wrapping it up, Sam, we'll continue to march, going to run a fundraiser for you and help with the cause, and all the other moral support, from the SOG guys here, and we wish you every success. That's the Frozen Dagger expedition for 2022, and thank you for joining us. Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Dick Thompson, MACVSOG Recon Team Leader. Thank you for being here and supporting Sam, offering your friendship and encouragement and your wisdom and the Arsenal program as well, and supporting veterans. People can donate to support Sam's Frozen Dagger expedition in the video description, link below. And veterans interested to take the Arsenal survey that Sam's taken, that I've taken, and a lot of veterans have taken. They can click the link below for Military and Veteran Gamers charity and get access through that. I'd just say, even if you don't think you have a problem, reach out. It can change your life today. It certainly made me think. It's made Sam think. Everyone I know from the forces who've taken the survey have found it a very useful thing to do. So I guess we wrap up there and say thanks, guys, and safe travels. But we'll obviously be in touch, and we'll be doing more on this.
Thank you for having me, Rob, and giving me a platform, and hopefully speak to you soon.
All right. We know you're going to do great. Remember, we'll be watching.